Growing onions, that can be confusing, and try your patience, as this podcast will demonstrate. As our resident vegetable expert, Master Gardener Gail Pothour, knows firsthand, growing green onions is easy. But bulbing onions? Well, Gail has more or less given up on trying to grow bulbing onions. However, if you want some onion clarity, I would invite you to visit the website of Dixondale Farms. They're a Texas-based seller of onion transplants. They have great educational pages that can help add clarity to growing onions. Their website is dixondalefarms.com, and we'll have a link to it in today's newsletter. Now, it should be pointed out that the bulbing onion trial conducted at the Fair Oaks Horticulture Center more than 10 years ago had some drawbacks. Gail talks about it in the podcast. Some of their problems included starting onions from seed, and that requires a lot of patience, and the results can be widely variable. I can speak to that. I've got onions sitting in the greenhouse that I started from seed 3 months ago that still aren't at a transplantable size. Now, at the trials they held at the Fair Oaks Horticulture Center, they were all started at the same time from seed in August and not transplanted into the raised beds until 3 months later, November. That's 3 months it took for those onion seeds to produce seedlings to get to a transplantable size about the thickness of a pencil. My own onions, sitting there after 3 months, they're about the thickness of a blade of grass. So I'll have to wait another couple of months, I think, before I can transplant those. One thing Gail has learned over the years from fellow Master Gardener Dave Vaughn, different day length requirements means that the onion transplants need to be transplanted at different times of the year. Here, we are in the intermediate day-length latitudes in USDA Zone 9. Intermediate onion varieties can be successfully planted in the fall for a late spring harvest. However, long-day onions should be planted in late winter, as in March, to be grown for a fall harvest. So you're basically taking what used to be a cool season onion and making it a warm season onion. Why is that? We'll explain it in the newsletter and in the podcast as well. According to the Master Gardeners of Santa Clara County, short day onions develop in no more than 12 hours of daylight. Consequently, in intermediate and long day zones, roughly latitudinally divided along a line extending from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco, where summer days are longer, these plants form extremely small bulbs prematurely. Usually short day and intermediate day type onions are planted in the fall. Long day types are planted in the late winter, early spring. And by the way, if you hear the term day neutral onion, what does that refer to? Fortunately for our aching brains, day neutral is just another term for intermediate day onions. You see, this is very confusing. But wait, there's more. When growing bulbing onions, the gardener has to consider the size of the bulb that they want it to develop, the shape of the bulb, its disease resistance, and most important in our household, storage potential. Some onion varieties can be stored in a cool, dry location successfully for 6 months or more. Other varieties, less than 3 months, or even less than that. Over at Johnny's Seeds catalog, they say this about growing onions. Day-length adaptation of onion varieties on a continuum with some overlap rather than distinct boundaries. For example, some long-day varieties may form bulbs farther south than others, and some intermediate-day varieties may form bulbs farther north than others. Additionally, environmental factors such as heat and soil moisture can affect onion bulbing, so even a properly selected variety needs good conditions for success. Large, healthy tops lead to optimum bulbs, so it's also important to give the onion plant enough time to size up prior to bulbing, which can be often achieved by varying planting dates and using transplants instead of or in addition to direct seeding in short season areas. I feel your pain, folks. Right now, you may resemble a deer staring into the headlights of an oncoming car, horticulturally speaking, of course. As with most gardening endeavors, though, you can get the hang of this, of growing bulbing onions. Just go with what works for you. We're going to have more info as well as charts and lists of onions in today's newsletter that might be worth your time and effort. Don't give up on onions. Even Gail still grows bunching onions, which are primarily used in cooking. Let's listen to what Sacramento County Master Gardener and vegetable expert Gail Pothour told us a few years ago about growing onions. Onions, Gail, take patience.
Oh, absolutely. And I find growing bulbing onions, the typical big onion, to kind of be a challenge. So I rarely grow onions in my own garden. If I do grow them, I'm going to grow one variety, and it's called Stockton Red. And it's getting a little more difficult to find seeds for Stockton Red, but that's one that I really like. But onions are day length sensitive. So you need to grow a type of onion, whether it's long day, short day, intermediate day, or day neutral, depending on your latitude. I think that's where a lot of people have problems. They are growing a variety that maybe isn't suited for their latitude. And so they either bolt prematurely or they don't bulb at all. So with Sacramento being in about a 38-degree latitude, we're intermediate day. So choose varieties that say they're intermediate day or that are day neutral. Day neutral means it doesn't matter. Anybody can grow them. So that's kind of the key. And where I've run into problems, if I buy sets or something, they don't necessarily tell you if they're long day, short day, intermediate day, whatever. And so I'm buying the wrong variety. Stockton Reds I know will do well here, so that's an intermediate day. But onions can be a challenge. And so, as I say, I don't grow them that often. I'll grow green onions, or I'm currently growing Egyptian walking onions, but bulbing onions I don't do too often.
Generally, onions are planted in late summer, early fall here in USDA Zone 9, September, October, and aren't harvested until June or July if you're going for the bulbing onions. Now, green onions are a different story. Green onions or scallions. You can grow those year-round here. Varieties like Evergreen White, Southport White, White Sweet Spanish, White Lisbon, Tokyo Long White, which I planted for the first time this year. And if you use a lot of green onions in your recipe preparations, always have a pot of onions growing.
That's what I found, that green onions are something that I use more. Well, I use regular onions a lot too, but I use a lot of green onions. And so those are easy to grow. I can grow them in a container. I can grow them practically any time of the year. If it's too hot, I can move them into the shade. So, yeah, that's a good one to grow.
Yeah, unfortunately, by the time they are ready to harvest, it's not like you can take the onions out and plant something else. Actually, you could. When the onions are harvested, if you reinvigorate the soil, you could probably put in zucchini or another summer squash or a winter squash.
Or set that space aside for planting your fall crop. Because some of those can go in August or September. They like to have warm soil to germinate, but they don't necessarily they need cool climate to mature. So a lot of our cool season crops, we would start growing when the soil is still warm, but we want them to mature when it's cooler out. So once you took those onions out, you could then plant something for the fall.
Among the onion bulbing varieties recommended by the University of California, Davis's Vegetable Research and Information Center are Grano, Green-X, California Early Red, Fiesta, Yellow Sweet Spanish, White Sweet Spanish, Southport White Globe, Southport Red Globe, and the Stockton Yellow Globe.
No Stockton Red in there, huh? We actually did an onion variety trial almost 10 years ago at the Fair Oaks Horticulture Center, where we grew several varieties of long day, intermediate day, and short day to see how they would do in our climate. And all the long day bolted, and some of the short day did as well. But that's what's critical, was to grow the right type. And what I mean by long day, intermediate day, and short day is, if you look at a map and you see your latitude, long day are going to be up north. So they need 14 to 16 hours of daylight in order for the bulbing to start. Intermediate day is 12 to 14 hours. Short day is 10 to 12 hours. That's down south. So it does have a lot to do with your latitude.
Yeah, exactly. If you live in Edmonton, you can grow long day onions.
And we did grow them here, and we found they don't do that well.
Yeah,
so it doesn't work.
I am not surprised on that.